Ladies and gentlemen, I now want to go to someone who is an actor, who's an activist, but more importantly, someone who's a new mother, who's watching things like Badlapur unfold on her screens, who's watching something like Calcutta unfold on her screens. How does a mother, an activist, a thinking woman react to all of this? I'm welcoming Swara Bhasker to the show. Swara, thank you very much. You are a new mother. How do you react to the pictures you're seeing from Badlapur, to the protests that you've seen in Calcutta for the last 12 days?
I mean, it's very, very disturbing, I think, for anyone who is tracking the news and seeing the kind of incidents that are being reported. And also, we sort of get to hear the gruesomeness of the acts in great detail. And that's also very, very ghastly to know about, because you really do feel like we are living among monsters and they are very much in our midst. So not just as a new parent of a baby girl, but I think as just a decent human being and a person and a citizen of this country, I'm absolutely shocked, ashamed and horrified. But I will say that, this is a horror one gets to experience every few months and every few years, in terms of one case will sort of come up and grab the imagination of the public like this. And I think that should make us ask some very serious questions about us as a society, about us as a polity, and about this country and its the treatment of its women, not from now but from forever. I mean, when I remember when Nirbhaya happened in 2012, there was such an outcry about it. It was a heinous case that really grabbed the attention and the emotions of the public at large. There were so many protests. There were all these calls to hang the rapists immediately, and the rapists did eventually hang after a trial. But honestly, what has changed? You look at what's happened in Kolkata, you look at what's happened in Bulandshahr with the Dalit girl who was assaulted by a government official. You look at what's happened in Muzaffarpur. You look at, you mentioned Badlapur a while ago. I mean, like, what has changed? All this anger, emotion, clamoring for hanging of rapists, nothing seems to make a difference. So obviously there's something very, very deeply rotten in the core of our values as a society. That's very, very unfortunate and deeply frightening for a new mother like me, and for everyone,
Your little girl is, of course, just 10 months old. But as she grows up, what do you tell her, given the reality on the ground? Do you tell her to reclaim the night, or you tell her don't go at night? I ask you this question not just in context of what has happened in Calcutta, but what has happened in Badlapur as well. If that young doctor was raped at night in her own hospital, there are two young toddlers, barely 4 years old, who've been raped in broad daylight in their own schools.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right that, as a parent, one will obviously and naturally feel fearful for the safety of one's children. But I don't think keeping women at home is the solution. Women have been at home for the larger part of, the last few centuries. It's only in the last maybe century that they've actually been able to, I'm saying in a general sense, take an active part in the public sphere. But rapes have been happening forever. So I don't think the solution lies in protecting your daughters more. And I frankly feel that these kind of solutions of restricting women's entry into public spaces, restricting the timing that women can move around freely is like, it's a medieval hack. It's a knee-jerk kind of medieval hack that doesn't want to look at what is wrong in our society and what is wrong within our families also, and within our very value system as a people. I do want to say that if you really want a hack, then the thing to do is to restrict men. Maybe put a curfew on men. Men shouldn't be allowed to step out alone after 9 p.m. not in groups. Maybe men, if they have to get out after 9 p.m. or 7 p.m., you can decide the time, should only be accompanied with women. And unless the woman can vouch for their decent conduct, they shouldn't be allowed on the street. So if there's anyone who should be restricted, and as a group that has to be restricted and kept inside, it's really men, frankly, not women. I mean, I know it sounds ludicrous, but flip it, and that's how ludicrous the argument is when it comes to women as well.
It's a fair point to make. Kolkata has shocked and horrified all of us at multiple levels. But what is it that has hit you the hardest?
What is most upsetting is that even in 2024, women must pay a price with their very life, with their bodily safety, their dignity, simply for doing their job. And the second thing I have to say that is very distressing is the kind of responses that you see on social media in the discourse around this case, which is completely sort of, either it's men who are like protecting their egos and they're like, oh, all men are not like this and so on. No, that's not the point, all right? All men may not be rapists, but all men do have a lot of privileges that come from patriarchy and the same system that enables men to rape with immunity. And the second thing that's very distressing is to see the kind of politicization that's happened over this case, which is that, people from a certain ideology, people, BJP supporters, Sanghi people, trolls, who have been silent on all the cases that have happened in BJP ruled states, on all the cases where BJP MLAs or MPs are themselves accused, who've been silent when Bilkis Bano's gang rapists were freed by the Gujarat government, who've not said a word about Brij Bhushan, who've not said a word about Kathua, and when BJP MLAs took out a march to protect rapists against an 8-year-old girl who was gang raped in Kathua. So people like this, and the examples are endless, Kuldeep Sengar, etc., Revanna, people like this who have not said a word when Ram Rahim and Asaram Bapu have got parole repeatedly. This culture of impunity toward sex offenders, rapists and molesters, they now are very concerned because it's in Kolkata and they found a way to target Mamata Banerjee and that government. I mean, I find that very, very, very distressing and hypocritical. Frankly, you're not concerned about women, so you've never been. So just honestly, shut up, sit down, take a back seat. There are enough people very, very genuinely upset about this. Let them take the discourse forward.
Swara, but the same charge of hypocrisy that you're referring to comes back to you as well. That when Hathras happens, Swara Bhasker wants the resignation of Yogi Adityanath. But when Kolkata happens, she says the guilty must be punished. She doesn't call for Mamata Banerjee's resignation. So that is hypocrisy as well.
I think that as far as calling for resignations go, I really would like to see political leaders across the spectrum take responsibility for what happens on their watch. So let's, yes, of course, people are asking for Mamata Banerjee to resign, and I completely understand that. Just like I absolutely understood why Yogi Adityanath, we were calling for him to resign. But since we are asking for resignations, maybe we should start with the people who are in the highest posts in office, whose watch crime has become rampant, in whose party are a whole host of rape and sexual abuse accused people who have very credible cases against them that are still MLAs, MPs. So I think when we call for resignations, let's start with asking for the resignation of the Prime Minister of this country. Because if on one issue, I think we can agree across political spectrums that the record of this country as a whole, whichever government, all the states, whichever parties are ruling them, is abjectly pathetic, is women's safety. You've seen this in Kathua. You've seen this in Hathras. You've seen this in the case of the wrestlers and their accusations. You've seen this with Bilkis Bano's case, who's had to go to Supreme Court because her gang rapist was set free. So honestly, I think that that all political parties have been extremely disappointing and let women down in terms of when they are in power and what their responses have been. But I will say there's only one political party whose leaders have repeatedly taken out protest marches to protect rapists, and that, I'm sorry, is the BJP. I'm not making this up. This is all available to you or in the public, in the public domain. So yes, governments cannot control individual cases happening. Rapes happen, but they can control how the law enforcement in their state act. And I mean, I think that there is at least, very least we can say is that the rapist or the accused rapist in the Kolkata case was arrested almost immediately, and the case is now transferred to the CBI. So we, hopefully there will be a more neutral sort of judgment and in that case. But and honestly, ma'am, I'll take criticism from many people, but I will not take criticism on the issue, on the question of hypocrisy from the BJP and supporters and the Sanghi trolls and Godi media. I will not, because...
Can I then ask you in conclusion, and this is a question I asked you as we began this interview, with a 10-month-old now in your hand, are you more paranoid about women's safety, about what's happening in the country, about how every daughter, not just your daughter, but every daughter is at risk?
No, I mean, it's obvious that the moment that children in this country, girls and boys, are not safe anywhere. It's very obvious that we have monsters within us, and frankly, as I say again and again, they are within our families. They're not just on the streets and unknown people. They're very much within our own families. I mean, if you look at the statistics around child sexual abuse, more than 90% of the cases are known people who are known to the child intimately. So I, as a parent, I mean, I will not let my child out of my sight, and I will ensure. I mean, I'm hyper vigilant now. I'm even now, as my baby is 10.5 months old, but even now, I mean, if anyone picks her up, especially men that are not my immediate family, I'm like absolutely hyper vigilant, and I cannot wait to take her back. And yeah, of course, there's a paranoia as a parent about the safety of your child, and I think we must all sort of train our children to recognize, good and bad touch. They say this to you now. Make them aware of these things in a language that is simple for them as soon as they are old enough to understand. And always, I mean, that's the first step to keeping your children safe, is to have a relationship of trust and total honesty, and a relationship where you are the child's safe space. That is really the first step in keeping them safe at home and outside as well.
Swara Bhasker, we leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much for your time here on Mirror Now. It was good to speak to you. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I'm stepping into a quick break on the show. The other big story tonight is coming from Badlapur near Mumbai. This is where 2 toddlers in kindergarten have been raped within the premises of their own school. Massive protests on the roads and at railway stations today. That's up next. Do stay with us.